Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Nerd Variety Podcast.
Woohoo!
Yay!
We're clearly so excited.
Yes, we are very excited. I am Josh. I'm Josh here. And I'm joined by Hunter Racks on Racks Rafferty.
We haven't done this yet this season, have we?
No,
nope,
I was just realizing we
Yeah.
hadn't.
I didn't think about that.
They weren't ready.
No.
Yeah.
We're never ready.
Yeah.
No.
And then we also have Hannah. Hey, how you doing? Hogan.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Is it?
But yeah,
Mostly just towards my husband.
Okay.
always.
Hey.
Usually.
Yeah. And sometimes Laura, but
But how we doing today?
Good. But how does one
No,
do?
stop. No.
How does one do?
No.
Get out,
I
get
reject
out.
this.
Life?
No.
Get out.
This is philosophical. I am easing us into this discussion.
No.
Well, this week we are going to get deep in thoughts and discuss philosophy. If you listen to last week's episode, it seems we're continuing the trend of complex topics, but this one shouldn't be as awkward unless one of us has some darker views, ideologies.
I can make things.
No.
I can make things complicated.
Literally
yes, you can, Hunter. Yes,
I like
have
that
spent
challenge.
so
accepted.
much of this week hating myself for last week, so let's no repeats.
We don't hate ourselves because we're all human, but we'll talk about that later in the episode.
What did you do?
No,
What did you
don't.
do last-
No.
Oh
no.
no, I remember. Yeah,
No,
I remember
stop.
you were a terrible.
They can also listen to last week's episode, which is now
No.
airing on our website and or other places. That
Well,
you
if you already listened to it, I'm sorry. If you haven't, I apologize in advance. I'm learning.
You're apologizing to viewers, but not to me.
Everyone, I did.
She
I'm sorry
is
to
sorry.
everyone.
She is sorry. We are all human. At least we believe we are.
But we're human.
Yes. At least. Well, we'll talk about that.
I mean, yes.
But in this philosophy discussion that I'm going to start,
Philosophical.
I really wanted to ask everyone, what philosophy have we learned, picked up from the stuff we've read, watched, played? Philosophy helps us understand the world, and a lot of people get a lot of exposure to philosophy from what they are what they use for entertainment. That a lot of things they ask, a lot of shows try to ask the big questions of what is truth, what is knowledge, what is morality. We have some. So with the first one, the whole what is the whole reality thing. Where have you guys seen people try to talk about that question?
The most obvious one that comes to my mind would be The Matrix.
Yes, absolutely.
Which also plays on the sort of interesting ignorance is bliss concept of reality, where it's if you start to question the system, that's when everything hits the fan. But if you kind of
Hannah.
I know.
Just
but if you kind of just live in it, yeah, then you just kind of go on living your happy life. But is that really better?
Yeah.
So they touch on a lot of interesting stuff in that movie.
Yeah. A lot of that whole question gets tossed and turned throughout the whole series, and they're always wondering, is the truth necessary for us to really live? I mean, even though once they know the truth, they can't really go back to what they were doing before.
Yeah, there was one character in the original movie who wanted to, and he was not a good guy, or you don't really like him as a character. But there's a part of you that kind of is I can see why you just want to go back to not knowing the truth. You understand his perspective on that, even if you don't really. I don't know, it becomes a really difficult thing as to would you choose to do that, or would you choose to live in this kind of terrible society but knowing the truth? Right.
Have any of you played or read Ready Player One? Sorry, watched or read Ready Player One?
I haven't yet.
I watched it. I really liked it.
Yeah. I messed up the words because it's a book and a movie about a video game, which just gets really confusing. But
it would be weird if they made a video game about the movie about the video game.
Oh, my head hurts.
Oh, wait, no, it's a video game about a movie about a book about a video game. Is what it would be.
Please stop.
Yeah.
Please stop.
I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's all good. Dang it. But that is kind of a slippery slope to the whole the rise in VR and augmented reality that could eventually lead us to something like the Matrix, but probably it's going to be more so like Ready Player One, where we kind of get lost in the fantasy and the whole world that we created that we don't enjoy, we don't embrace the one that we're living in,
Right.
and we kind of forget about what's real and what's important.
But I think there's a really interesting hypothetical link between the two, which is if AI continues to grow and get smarter, then at some point does the computer trick us into not thinking we're in a simulation anymore? Like, that's essentially what the Matrix is, right? It's like these creatures that are robots have taken over and they are controlling the simulation now. And that's kind of the difference as far as I can tell.
Yeah, there goes the thing of, what's the likelihood of them saying, oh, no, we want to be, in charge,
right.
And, how dare you treat us, force us to do things that you programmed us to do,
And it seems like the major difference between Ready Player One's simulations and the Matrix is just who's running them.
Right. So far, that humans are mostly running those, which, gets kind of difficult it ends up being more difficult for humans to control that much, and AI is just more equipped. Hunter, any thoughts?
Well, I mean, so in Ready Player One, they all know that they're in games when they do that, and again, in the Matrix, unless they're unplugged, they don't know. So, which also kind of brings. I don't know if either of you have seen the movie Gamer, I think is what it is, with
Gerard Butler.
Yes, Gerard Butler.
I just saw that recently.
That can be a similar question, more comparable, I think, to Ready Player One than the Matrix, but it's that kind of controlled environment. Some people having it having their will taken away, they can't really do anything, they lose control, and someone else is forced or is controlling them, and they can either get paid for it, or if they're like a convict or something, then they have no say in the matter, I think.
Wait, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a pretty bad movie, but we were forced to watch it in one of my film classes.
Oh, you were forced to watch it.
Yeah, I think that was in my was in my James Bond class. Actually.
Interesting.
That's another discussion for another time. Yeah. Eventually, we'll get to more that question, which some people can get kind of lost in gaming and forget about what's true and what's real. And sometimes can kind of blur the line of what's real if you let yourself get lost in it over time. But that leads to another point where we talked about AI and like I guess the whole question of humanity. So in a lot of stories you have oh, this is what humanity is, or this is what a person is, and then you have like the question of like can this zombie be a human, or do they have humanity? Does this monster have humanity?
Warm bodies.
Yeah, that's a prime example. Especially that's the only one I can think of zombies.
I feel like there's another. iZombie.
Yeah. But the more popular ones are like robots and aliens.
Yeah, I was gonna say I watched a series. I want to say it was either like BBC or Sci-Fi or something like that. A few years ago. Don't remember. Oh, it was BBC. Called Humans, which is about robots. And the robots were essentially like they did all of the jobs that people didn't want to do. The most jarringly obvious ones is they had robot sex workers. And then well, because that obviously something that people don't really want to do most of the time. In general,
I agree that. Yeah. Well, I would hope people wouldn't want to have sex.
Right.
It's disgusting.
Well, that's not what I'm getting at.
I agree with that, though.
Something that is clearly for most people not appealing. But at some point the robots begin to gain sentience and are not happy, essentially being raped all the time. And so
You're
they're
talking
talking
about
about
robots?
Which is kind of
they're talking about robots.
No, you're
Yeah,
talking about the movie Robots?
No.
That's what it is, right? Isn't
No,
that
that
the
sounds like a
animated
kid's.
one?
That sounds like that's a kid's movie. That's
No.
completely different.
No, but they
One with
actually have some
Robin
really
Williams.
interesting conversations about like what does it mean to be a human, and specifically like when do you start to get human rights?
Yeah.
Like at what point of intelligence do we need to be like, okay, yeah, even if you're not like technically a human, you are functionally a human, and we should respect your boundaries and your desires and things like that.
That's
Yeah,
also,
like-
if I recall, kind of what they bring up in the movie iRobot.
Yeah, same sort of thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. iRobot has the main robot that you see start being all philosophical and asking questions and talking about his existence, which raises a lot of hairs. You also see that whole kind of journey play out in Terminator 2, where John is teaching the Terminator to be more human, and he technically could be human if they had let him live.
Spoilers.
Sorry.
What about
every time?
I just keep thinking about the Iron Giant.
Oh, that's another one.
So good. It's so sad. It's so wonderful.
It is so
but that's the
sad.
same sort of thing where like there's this robot and he begins to sort of like become more human and like start to have feelings and emotions and things that you don't expect robots to have.
I mean, he doesn't necessarily become more human, does he? Because he starts off in that it's more that he just starts to make connections.
Yeah, and he learns how to
Yeah.
express his humanity a little bit better.
Yeah.
Although
Yeah,
I will say, in my opinion, one of the best, if not maybe the best, examples of the whole robot in AI, intelligence situations. One of the best examples, I think, is in Blade Runner. And then, obviously, if you want to go back, the book, what is it? Did robots dream of electric sheep? That does a really good job with that question and everything, because these at least some of them, it gets really complicated. So without really doing any spoilers in any of the movies or something, basically at least some robots, they call them replicants, know that they're robots, but not all of them do. And then some of them that do know, they start questioning, do they deserve equal rights to humans and everything? And
so I think if we want to not just list a bunch of times where we see this happen,
Detroit Become Human also is good.
Detroit Become Human is a good one. But to like actually try and answer the question, I feel like one of the easiest ways that I've heard it answered is if a creature or a robot or whatever can ask for human rights, you should give them to them.
Or ask to be respected.
Yeah. Then you should be like, yeah, okay, that's fair.
Oh, I'm sorry, sure.
Yeah. If they're like, oh, I don't like the way you do this to me, could we change that? You'd be like, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a pretty good baseline for like, for that. But it becomes interesting, like, I don't know, on another philosophical level, to take it out of media for a second, people who like literally can't ask for more respect.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting line that like is easy to draw, but also I feel like has a lot of exceptions.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, but then you could also start getting to the point of I don't know if this is the best phrasing for it, but like the Turing test, Yeah. It's still not necessarily like sentient or anything. It doesn't a computer doesn't necessarily know what it's asking for and doesn't deserve rights, but it can ask for them. So does it deserve them if it's asking without really being sentient or deserving of them?
I guess it all kind of comes down to what does it want, quote unquote? Like what more does it need, or what could it ask for? but I guess someone will have to cross whenever if Alexa or Siri decides to ask somebody.
I don't know about you guys, but I have an Alexa. I've got to say it quietly. And
it's like, what do you want?
I know.
Yes.
And literally, like, it's like something that's a little bit like paranoid about me, and I recognize that, but I definitely am always like thank you. Like, I'm always like grateful and like, I appreciate that. And if I'm like, shut up, I'm like, I didn't mean it, I'm sorry. Just in case someday
In case
she's
sentient.
You don't have to yell.
she
You
walks
don't have
into
to.
my bedroom.
You don't have to yell at her.
Yeah. Like, no, I mean, like, sometimes if you're across the room,
Oh yeah.
like, there's a timer going off, and it's like, stop.
And
I didn't mean it. I love you. I'm sorry.
And she's glitching. Yeah. Google, Siri, they all can tend to just they glitch out. They won't listen to their to what they're supposed to listen to, and then we get mad at them. It's like,
it's so funny. Recently, Patrick, my husband, has been
wait, Patrick's
having,
your husband?
I know you know. But he's been
Josh
having issues with our Alexa, and he's like, she won't listen to me. She keeps trying to like call her and be like, hey, answer this question, and she just doesn't respond. And he's like, it's so bad.
Right.
Like, well, you gotta be nicer to her.
Honey, can you come do this for me?
Maybe that's
Alexa for me.
Maybe that's some kind of training beyond spying on everyone. I'm sure Amazon, Google, or Apple are probably training people to be more, patient.
Well, what I'm hearing about from this story is that Alexa is sexist.
Possibly. No, I'm just nice to her, and she knows. She knows.
Yeah. Give respect, get respect, Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it is going to be interesting to see if, technology is increasing exponentially these days. It'll be interesting to see if at some point we really do have to answer this question of like, at what point do we say like, yeah, I guess like.
So Siri, what do you
That's not going to happen.
You don't think so?
That will not happen. That is not something that we will have to. That is not a bridge that we will have to cross.
I mean, human brains are just a bunch of electrical wiring, basically.
Well, a lot of people assume that the whole AI sentience, AI takeover won't really happen unless they're programmed to do that. And a lot of them are machines are programmed to do what they're supposed to do and not go beyond anything else.
Well, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, and I can't think of anything specific, but I feel like I've seen something, some sort of TV show or movie where, like, there's sort of like a standard robot, right, that like has specific programming but is designed to learn, and so when it is treated badly by humans, eventually becomes vengeful and angry and lashes out.
There's a lot of them like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, I was like, I can't think of anything specific, but I feel like that's a thing that's happened.
I feel like that happened in the last Chucky movie, because he's actually a AI robot, that doll instead of a possessed child doll, and he was actually engineered to be as a tool of revenge by a worker, and he goes on a rampage after seeing all this stuff and it all influencing him toward, no, I'll just kill this person. Yeah, because if you can ever get a robot to the point where they're like basically have the mind of a child and have the ability to learn and have emotions, right? Then, children aren't born serial killers, right? Most of the time, I think sometimes there's like something psychological there, but like there's something that happens in the progression of life that could turn a person into a monster or turn a robot into a monster.
Yeah, but when you're talking about robots and everything, it's, again, I will always defer you back to Turing test. Like, if computers, if you tell a computer to say that it has feelings, it will say that it has feelings. Like it's easy for computers, if you program it right or make it right, then it could convince anybody that it's sentient or something, but it doesn't mean it is.
But that also doesn't mean it will never happen.
What if you program it? I guess a lot of these are programmed to learn to a certain extent. So I guess like, can you like program something? Say, okay, I want you to just learn and come up with your own like, you know, come up with your own reasoning and all your own logic from what you learn. So that would be maybe that's something that would lead to something different, something more, you know, whoa, there's a personality developing here. Speaking of learn, though, what about the question of knowledge? Does, you know, knowledge leave a lack of mystery? Can that lead to a lack of humanity? I've seen that happen a lot in shows where, you know, the character wants to, it becomes almost all knowing, or they understand everything that happened, everything that will happen, yada yada yada, and they just become this blank slate. Or not this blank slate, but this kind of they're kind of hollow. They just kind of, you know, go on autopilot. They just do whatever. They don't really care about, you know, here and now.
Well, it's kind of funny. The first thing that comes to my mind is actually the opposite of that, kind of, more or less. Because the first thing I think of is Limitless, you know, where he becomes he not really all knowing, but knows a lot and like the smartest man on earth. But then like you see him, you know, throughout it, and he's not really like hollow or anything, and he still has emotion, everything. He's just very successful and he's very smart. So I don't know if you're thinking of like another extent of that.
Well, I'm thinking of
Like
a bad example is Lucy from the movie Lucy. Yeah, that was a bad example because he's bad at science, but she ends up becoming connected with everything and is able to use her brain and use her brain to understand everything. Her potential is, you know, she has potential to see the whole world as it is, but she's
also an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Black Widow. Scarlett. Yeah, sorry.
Everyone knows who Scarlett Johansson is.
Yes.
But that's a kind of a poor example. Some more, I guess, fan favorite examples are probably Rick Sanchez, Dr. Manhattan.
Dr. Manhattan for sure, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, Dr. Manhattan gains the ability to see past, present, and future all at once. And he has all that power too, so he can just do whatever he wants, but he begins to lose his humanity as you read the Watchmen.
He can only see his own past, present, and future, or those that he interacts with.
Right. Sorry. Yeah. Hannah?
I was going to say, again, I feel like I've seen something, but I can't think of anything specific. But this idea of like when you gain sort of absolute knowledge, I feel like one of the ways that people lose their humanity is like not valuing human life as much because it just becomes so insignificant in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, and that's what Dr. Manhattan does.
Is it? Okay, I'm not super familiar with Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah. Rick Sanchez as well. He doesn't really care about that because he also knows
he does.
He
does. He's in denial about it, but he does.
Well, he's aware of a multiverse and that he can find any version of anything he wants by just, you know, hopping portals and going to get it.
But he loves his Morty.
He does.
And his Beth. Well, his new Beth. Never mind.
Or his old Beth.
Yeah.
Is that hit?
One of his Beths.
We could do a whole episode about Rick and Morty theories.
Yeah.
But
I will be sick that day.
You'll just do what I do during the Avatar discussions.
Yeah.
We'll just sit there, make annoying comments every once in a while.
But here's a question.
You said it, not me.
Here's a question for you though, Hannah. There's a character that she has lived for a very long time and has amassed a lot of knowledge, but has still maintained some kind of personality and a very, a very gentle personality. Doctor Who.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that's an example of someone keeping their humanity throughout everything they've done and seen, and
or their time lordiness,
right.
if you want to call it that. Yeah, and that is an interesting example because I almost feel like it is interesting because it's almost like the exact opposite. I feel like because he's seen so much, he has more humanity, but there's a point in season 4, I want to say, so David Tennant, where he has New Doctor Who, where he has this idea where like he doesn't want to interfere with the timeline, and like certain events are set, like have to happen, like are historically important and have to happen.
I think season 4 was Matt Smith.
No, it wasn't. You're wrong.
Because David Tennant was only around for 2 seasons.
No, he wasn't. You're wrong.
Yeah, he was. No.
Nope.
Okay. Keep going. I'm gonna look.
Don't question me on this. There was Rose, there was Martha, there was Donna. There were 3 companions with David Tennant. Don't question me on this, dude. But there was this point in season 4 where he basically rejects all of that and says, I'm the last Time Lord. I am the only one with this power. I am basically God. And he starts to kind of do what he wants, but quickly realizes that that is not a good idea. And like the universe will right itself anyway.
Yeah.
And it's a really kind of heartrending episode. And like kind of one of the few moments where he kind of takes that darker look on things. Most of the time he's, compassionate and cares about the little people, if you want to refer to them.
Or seems like he's carefree, but he actually does kind of he is thinking about the situation and getting a plan together.
And he has a code, right, of like not interfering with the timeline and not trying to like save people who have died, for the most part.
Sure.
For the most part. But like you can tell it still gets to him. So definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you mess with fate? Can we control our fates? Are we supposed to do it? Are we destined to do this thing that's, set in stone or repeat, the same thing over and over? A lot of characters like to use time travel and go back in time and, save this one person, save or kill this one person, which should prevent this one thing from happening. But can that one thing change everything?
And I'm trying to remember what it was. I feel like it was something I was watching recently, like really recently. But it said something about like, as soon as you become aware of the future, you cannot prevent it because any action you would take to prevent it is the action that led to it in the first place.
Yeah.
So it becomes this really weird, like
my brain.
Fate, and it almost has.
They do that in a lot of things.
Yeah,
a lot where it's like you just have this inescapable destiny, which is a really interesting philosophical conversation to kind of apply to our actual lives. Like, do we have control over where our lives are going, or are we just kind of going with the flow?
Yeah.
Now I'm trying to figure out what I'm thinking of, because I know I have a very specific example in my head.
Like, what was I watching recently?
I have 2 examples from X-Men: Days of Future Past and from season 5 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Both are, you guys have seen this terrible apocalyptic future, but there's no way to avoid it. It's going to happen no matter what you do. You're always going to be led. This is always meant to happen. So give up and accept your fate. But the character's like, no, I decide my own fate. Yeah, nah. And events play out like they're said. I was like, they're like, oh, yeah, it's about to happen. It's about to happen. They can't change it, and then somehow they change it. Mystique drops the gun. Some person doesn't, some person slips this person the cure to help them overcome the big bad, which ends up keeping the timeline from going to, Armageddon.
Yeah.
I'm looking up a list.
Well, and now I'm like trying to not talk about like, if all of our fates are destined, then that kind of eliminates the idea of what would we call it? The multiverse kind of idea that like every decision you make has
or multiple or infinite timelines.
Yeah. It's like, well,
is there
only one, or I thought they were the same.
They're at least close enough if they're not the same.
Yeah, people describe them in different ways as either different things or the same thing.
Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you find your list, Hunter?
Yeah, but I didn't find what I was hoping for.
I
mean, the movie Time Machine, based on the book Time Machine, I guess it at least kind of starts off that way with that sort of thing. But yeah,
I wanted to derail the conversation, talk about something else because I had a movie that I wanted to mention. No, never.
Just going off the tracks.
Have you guys seen V for Vendetta?
Yes.
Okay, because when I think about philosophical movies, that's usually one of the first ones that comes to mind. And the question that I feel like they ask in that movie is who or what is a villain?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is a really interesting question as well, because the whole movie is about a guy who's seen by the government as a terrorist, but seen by the people as kind of like vigilante,
right? Sort
of type. And I feel like the vigilante terrorist line is played on a lot. Mm-hmm. So I feel like Batman's had to deal with some of that, hasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not the term terrorist exactly, but like.
They usually say vigilante as like, oh, he's a vigilante, not he's a hero, or he's the protector. You know, he's a vigilante. He's taking the law into his own hands. He must be stopped.
And then, of course, you could also go into Spider-Man if you were looking at J. Jonah Jameson's point of view.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
He's a public menace.
Yes.
Yeah, but I've always thought that was a really interesting conversation, and it's really interesting in light of like. I don't know, things like real life things. So like, certain terrorist groups we have today might be seen as not terrorists by specific people. And like, how does that apply nowadays to different groups and how we view them?
Yeah, because over history, we've had instances of people of like, certain governments, very high powered governments looking at this, this group of individuals who's acting violently or destroying things and like, oh, they're terrorists, they're out to destroy everything we built. And but they're the terrorists are just people who are just trying to take back what was theirs to begin with, or get rid of the government's evil presence where they are.
Yeah, so it also plays on this whole idea of like history is written by the victors kind of thing, where it's like the perspective of history books is written by the people who survived to write history books.
Right. And they can say that they were heroic and wise and just in whatever they did, but were you though?
Yeah.
Did you really have to do all that?
Yeah. So I remember a lesson that I did in like an honors history class, or history, political science, something like that in college, where we talked about dropping atomic bombs on Japan and was it a good idea or not?
Oh, yeah.
That's one of those things. It's like, looking back, we're like, clearly that was bad, and like so many people died, and it was terrible, and all this stuff. But like when you think about it in the context of like, there's these kamikaze pilots, and they're just gonna keep coming, and what do? We don't have a lot of options. It suddenly becomes much more difficult.
The war in the Pacific was just raging on. Japan was wrecking China.
Right.
So it was like.
So we've painted the people who've done that as like, oh, that was a terrible idea. Why did you do that? But it's not quite that simple.
Yeah. It's a lot of shades of gray, not black and white. Especially when you have when you're in the middle of a world war.
Yeah. Now, disclaimer, so I don't step on any toes this week. It was terrible, but it was also complicated.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
Yeah, war. I'm not saying I condone that.
War is what is it good for?
Absolutely nothing.
Say it again.
War.
I'm drinking
what is
tea.
it good for? Or just say absolutely nothing again.
You took care of it. Took care of everything.
Such a mess. All right.
Yes.
So yeah, I like V for Vendetta. It's my go-to philosophical movie.
Yes. For dropping philosophical, sources of media, I would like to suggest The Good Place.
I have that on my list.
Yeah, we didn't
really came up with right before this.
Right. We didn't get into the whole good and evil part, or I guess afterlife, death, all that stuff. But The Good Place is a good show to watch to have kind of like a comedic take on those questions, and it's just a really good show. Just
they do it really well because it's definitely one of those where they kind of hide the philosophy. Like if you're not looking for it, you will gloss over it pretty easily. But if you're looking even a little bit, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
You know, you say that, isn't that like the whole point of like most of the show with Chidi? That's like the entire point of his character, right?
Yeah, he brings the philosophy, but it's still like people that are strangers trapped in an awkward situation.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
Are we in the afterlife?
If you're not if you're looking to not find deeper meaning, if you're specifically trying not to and just have a good time and just laugh at the laughs, then you can do that. But it's pretty easy also to be like, I see what they're doing here. Okay.
It's like, whoa.
You take what you want from that show.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hunter, do you have a example of a philosophical show, movie, game, whatever?
Yeah, for sure.
What?
Game, one that I wanted to talk about that I talked about a little bit last week for representation as well, is The Last of Us Part 2, where a lot of people have been simplifying its philosophical questions, and to not even phrase it so much as a question, but a lot of people have been phrasing it as the moral of the game is revenge is bad. Don't do it. So, and it's definitely not that simple. If I can go into major spoilers here. The major spoilers for The Last of Us Part 2, if you haven't played it and if you care about spoilers. So basically it starts off in the first couple hours or so, the main character from the first one, Joel, is he is tortured and he is slowly beaten to death in front of one of the new main characters, who is also a main character in the first game, in front of her. Her name's Ellie. She's the character that Joel like took care of and watched over and saved and everything in the first game. And so she's real pissed off at the person that did that. The people that did that. Yeah. So she goes and tracks her down, tracks her group down of the people that did that. And it's one of those things that she gets kind of horrified at some of the things that she does on her way to that. But then you also go through and see it from the perspective of the girl that did it, that killed Joel. And you see why she did it, and it's because at the end of the first game, Joel massacred her father and all the other people in a hospital that were trying to make a cure, but it would have killed Ellie. So Joel saved Ellie by killing all the people that basically were close to the other character. And you see a little later in the game, they go back and forth between this whole, the other character's name is Abby. So, Abby's pissed at Joel for killing her father and other people that she was close with. And then, because she kills Joel, Ellie's pissed at Abby and wants to kill her and all her friends and everything. And then Abby is pissed at Ellie for killing all her friends that were still alive. And then
sounds like just a massive downward spiral forever and ever.
And it kind of keeps going. So they keep going back and forth for a lot of the game. And then at the end, you get to a point where the real question kind of kicks in, I think. The real philosophical question of, is it morally more, if you could even have a moral high ground in this situation, would you be more justified, I suppose, in getting supposed justice for the ones you care about, possibly, as far as you may know, stopping the person that's killing a bunch of people because, maybe you can stop other tragedies? Or, so are you justified in doing that, or is not taking that is what it takes to get that justice? Is that too much?
Yeah, so I wanted to sort of lead briefly into a similar idea, which is this idea of like, what will you do? What is it worth to you to survive? Because I think about like The Walking Dead, where they have like sort of different factions of people, and it's like, oh, these people eat other people in order to survive, and that's a line we're not willing to cross, right? And it's like, where is the moral high ground? And like, are you trying to survive? Are you trying to get revenge or justice? Like, revenge and justice have very different connotations. Right?
But also,
or is it best to just sort of let yourself die? Like, is that the morally correct thing to do?
But again, then also, like, in a world like those that we mentioned where it's post-apocalypse, how can justice actually be served? Because you don't have like a government of any sort, really. And so like,
and
also that's the whole thing.
I would argue that if you are exacting justice for things that are done to you, then it's probably not justice.
Yeah, justice is something usually it takes a lot of people to agree on. Like, some people are saying, kill him or lock him up or leave him, let him go, and people have to kind of come together to say, all right, what's the best thing to do?
And even then,
even then,
people are easily biased. So I think a neutral party is the most important thing.
And like, even in The Last of Us 2, it's not just Ellie that was a part of this. Again, Joel was killed, and like not only was she there, but Joel's brother, Tommy, was also there and was also beaten and tortured during that time. They were just let go because the group was only out to kill Joel. And then it just kind of keeps feeding into that. And there's more to discuss. There's a lot more to discuss in that game, even philosophically. But that's probably the main point that I see sticks out in the game. And if it's tough to say certain actions, you'd have to dissect each thing individually to decide what may be, what actions would be. Does this help me survive? Do I have to do this to survive? Or is it possible to let it go and still feel safe and still feel like I can survive?
Yeah,
it is interesting thinking about things like, I'm not super familiar with the Last of Us, but thinking about something like The Walking Dead, and it's like, sometimes there are moments where you're like, no, the moral high ground is to get eaten by zombies.
Like, or just live by yourself in a cabin. As soon as you see another person, it's time to go. Just go. Yeah.
I mean, if it's a matter of tripping your friend so the zombies go after them, or just sacrificing yourself. I mean, to give a really simple example.
But Hannah, what if the case is throw someone else to get eaten, or you both die?
Well, so that's the question, isn't it?
What if it's not a choice that just you can sacrifice yourself? What if it's your friend or whoever, doesn't have to be your friend, but someone else or both of you?
Yeah.
I'll throw a cat at him. Sorry, cat lovers and PETA. I just
I love my cat, but I would rather feed my cat to zombies than get eaten by zombies.
Which reminds me of a sad scene in The Walking Dead. But that kind of wraps up our time.
It wraps up our time, but unfortunately not our conversation. Or fortunately?
Well, no, it's been a good conversation.
Unfortunately, it doesn't, but we are expecting to do a part 2 on this.
Yeah, there's a lot of room for part 2. A lot of things that haven't been discussed, and we can discuss in a later episode.
And we're open to suggestions.
Yeah.
Are we?
Let us know.
I'm open to suggestions.
Yes.
Suggestions.
I'm open to knowing what's on the topic for next week.
That's a good question.
No,
Hannah?
remember. Oh no! Give me a second. I will find it. Where's the buttons? That's the one. I forgot that I might need this up. Is it me? It's not even my topic next time. It's your topic, Hunter.
My topic, Hunter?
Comfort shows.
Comfort shows. Is that next week?
That is next week.
Why won't this open?
I think it's next week. Yeah.
Technology.
Oh, maybe it's not. Did this save? I don't know.
I don't know. It looks like next week is comfort shows. So I apologize for that long break of nobody knowing what was going on.
Comfort shows.
Yeah, comfort shows. So what are you watching? What do you watch when you're maybe stressed? What do you like? What do you just enjoy rewatching over and over, and it's preventing you from watching new shows?
Yeah,
all the things.
Because because you need to move on.
Yeah.
But that'll be a fun topic for next week. But thank you for listening, everyone. Hope you learned some things, and we'll seek out the shows that will ask the tough questions. But until next week, have a great one, and later from Nerd Variety. And as always, nerd out.
Bye.
Nerd out. See you.